Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Are we still up up and alive? Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So there are, I think, seven participants here with us
Good
already.
morning, sir.
So good morning, sir. So we have with us today Dr. Janeth Morata Fuentes. She is from Philippine Science High School, Eastern Visayas, and she'll be talking about interactive science in a remote learning setting, teaching tools and tricks in the new normal. Okay, so for the information of everyone, this meeting is actually, or this session is actually recorded because there are a few of us who can be here with us right now live. So what we agreed upon is just we just send them a recorded copy of the meeting. So or the session. So Ma'am Janet, I think we can begin now.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm actually glad to see more teachers out there. These times have actually we've been too distant from each other, and talking to a computer is just not the same as talking to real people. And what I'm going to show you, or actually what I'm going to share with you, is called from decades of teaching experience and also research. So before I say anything more, and babble here, I just like to welcome you all to this talk. And here is I prepared slides, of course, I prepared slides, and let me see whether I know how to do this. There we go. Okay, so you see, as a teacher, technology sometimes, it kinds of confuses me. So good thing for you who are still on, the millennials, because many of you are actually quite adept with this. Let's go. Now I can see any of you, so all I can see is my slide. And what we're going to talk about is interactive science in a remote learning setting. I know that these times have actually been quite difficult for us. This has been challenging times, and uh, there are even days when we just don't want to deal with the whole educational setting because we're not familiar with it. And so, what I'm going to share with you is called from research, called from best practices, and it's also called from 20 years of my experience as a science teacher. And I've been modifying, adjusting all of these strategies because many times you make mistakes, many times your strategies will just flop, and you have to modify it. You have to make sure that the next time you come up or implement a lesson, it will go well with our students. So that's the old time, pre-pandemic. This time around, it's even more challenging because we have to learn how to migrate what we used to do in a face-to-face session to an online setting. And for those of you, I'm not sure if there are public school teachers here, but in the public school setting, there's even none of that interaction because there's only just the module, and then the teacher is there to check. So let me introduce myself. I come from the Center for Research in Science and Technology. That's a research center of Philippine Science High School. And I have more than 20 years of teaching. I handle chemistry. I'm also a research mentor, which because here at PSI we have a research program. And so I do a lot of science. I do a lot of science with my kids. I call them kids even when they're senior high school already. And I'm also a researcher. So I teach and I do research. I do a lot of things. Siguro kasi ang tanda ko na. So I've dabbled in textbook writing, in developing modules. I've also headed the Philippine Science High School Systems Curriculum Development Program years ago. And I know what works, I know what does not work, but there are times when, especially these times, when I'm not really sure whether something is working. I think you also have that feeling. But anyway, let's see this. This is a picture. It's an early morning shot of my students conducting water quality study, which focuses on macroinvertebrates as a pollution indicator. It's actually a good picture, except that of course the environment is not mabaho siya. It's Cancabato Bay in Tacloban City. There's a lot of decaying organisms there, a lot of decaying bodies from Typhoon Yolanda. But it's one of the main marine sanctuaries in the city. So this is what they do, and this is what I do with many of my students. I make them conduct investigations that are not only lab-based but are also based on their environment. So one of the things that they learn is not really just about the skills, laboratory skills, the investigation skills. They also have to learn how to deal with people. Marami kasi sa mga batang to, they're quite protected. Hindi sila nakakalabas ng campus many times. So it's only with research that they're able to go out. And that is if the research entails that. So they have to talk to the fishermen, to the boatmen, and then they see just what the situation is in the real world. So itong mga batang to, medyo mayaman ang mga to. So iwi talaga sa kanila na nandun sila sa squatters area and all that. But you make them realize that this is what science does. Science is supposed to impact on the lives of people. And then in my chemistry class, this is by the way my laboratory, and I miss having the kids inside the laboratory. So in my chemistry class, I also integrate laboratory investigations because not only is it based on experience, and I think you can corroborate on this if you are a fan of lab investigations, even small activities, small experiments, they tend to engage students more than, like when you sit there and give them information. It's just different when they are up on their standing up and doing things and making mistakes. So it's a fun way to teach science where you only facilitate. Medyo matrabaho din siya, but at the end of the day, when you see just how much learning happens with our students, among our students, that's actually payment enough. Now, these were the usual ways by which we engaged our students. We made our science classes interactive. That was pre-pandemic. This time around, we don't have such privilege. We don't have the ease by which to move around. We can't even go out many times. And then we also don't have the convenience of having these kids inside the laboratory. Even now, our research kids, because they're graduating, they have to be scheduled, and they need to go through a lot of documents, submit a lot of documents just to be here in the laboratory. And we have that problem. We have that problem now. And so what I want to talk about would be interactive learning in a science class despite this remote learning modality. And these are actually practical things which have been found by research to work even years ago when some schools were already doing online learning. At the end of this, I hope that you'll be able to define the process of interactive learning and be able to explain just what exactly are the advantages of this kind of learning. And then at the very last part, you should be able to enumerate, describe and apply these strategies, tools, and techniques. I'm going to show you a list, and as teachers, I know that you can just choose this list and then contextualize it and use it to make sure that in this remote education setting, we're still making our science classes as interactive as it is possible. So there you go. Three major things only. I'll introduce you to what science learning is, so this is going to be brief. And then what interactive learning in science classes is, and then of course, the strategies, tools, and techniques. Okay. Pre-pandemic, we could see our students. We could actually take verbal and non-verbal cues to know whether they're still engaged, they're on task, they understand. So we have all of this strategies which work. But this time around, we don't know whether what we're doing is working, because if we're not reading up on research, we're not reading up on best practices, then we don't really know whether what we're doing is working or not. So this is how we are now. We face the computer. For those of us, for those schools which have chosen the online mode of learning, we face the computer most of the time. Nakakakapal siya actually ng glasses, masakit siya sa ulo. And then you don't have the benefit of the laughter of your students, because many times ganito, are you there? Ganyan yung mga line natin. Are you there? Nandiyan ka ba? Magpakita ka, magparamdam ka. Para tayong mga espiritista, di ba? That's how it is. It's even, I think it's even worse for those schools which have chosen the modular approach. I have my nephew and I have my other the younger kids at home, and they're doing modular. That's all they do. Face a modular approach. Face a handout is it's so impersonal, and many times the conflict in the home this time is of children, students who are not doing the module. Kasi nga iba, hindi naman siya nakakatuwa talaga, especially when they're just printed out black and white. So yon, there's no interaction at all. And so the next question would be, how exactly are we going to do interactive learning in a science classroom when there's distance, even when there's a computer and you can see the face, there's still distance. There's two-dimensional, it's a two-dimensional relationship that I know we're all grappling with. Di ba nakakapagod minsan na hindi mo nakikita yung mga estudyante, hindi mo sila talaga nakakausap, nakakapagod mag-type sa messenger, makipag-chat, kasi we just have so many other things that we need to do. And what I want you to think about as we go through this is we go back to what exactly science education is. Popular, contrary to popular practice, it's not the teaching of information that should be the focus of science education. Ito ang palaging sinasabi ko sa teachers na tinitrain ko. I've been coming up with training activities for teachers for so many years. And what I always tell them is this: the content is going to change in a decade's time. Knowledge is exponential. A lot is being discovered. What is important for us when we teach science are actually this. We teach scientific inquiry skills. We develop this among our kids. We make them understand scientific phenomena. And this is a very, very good way to tie up the different disciplines, physics, biology, earth science, tie this up into explaining a particular natural event. And then, of course, we need for our kids, when they go out of our classrooms, we need for them to be able to appreciate the scientific process. Just as a review, what exactly is scientific inquiry? When we talk about inquiry learning in science, you're familiar with scientific investigations, yung mga ganon, tapos scientific projects, and then even lab activities. These are activities which would push our students to use scientific inquiry skills. And this is important because we want our kids to go through the scientific method. The third one, which is the appreciation of the scientific process, would only happen if we also do scientific inquiry. So hands-on yung approach na yan. Maririnig niyo yan. I think some of you may have heard of discovery learning, hands-on approach. So these are really all scientific inquiry. At the bottom of this, critical to this would be the scientific method. And then there is understanding of scientific phenomena. There is this movement this time around which is called phenomena-based learning. And when we talk about phenomena-based learning, Finland this year just turned around the whole curriculum and made the curriculum for basic education phenomenon-based. So what is this? In science, when we talk about phenomena, we talk about the mystery of these events. So when we teach scientific phenomena, when we make our students understand phenomena, we make them understand the science mystery. For example, you ask, why is it that icebergs float on water. That's a discrepant event. When we say discrepant event, it just, how do you say that? It opposes what is assumed to be commonsensical. Di ba iniisip natin it's ice, it's supposed to submerge in water because solid is supposed to be like denser than water, than liquid water, but it's not like that. So, ang mangyayari nito, when we make our students study this particular natural event, we make them go across so many things, so many fields of sciences, and come up with, develop so many of their skills. So let's go back to this. This is of the heart of science education. Scientific increased skills, scientific phenomena, and of course the appreciation of the scientific process. And we also need to understand when we teach science, you also teach them that there is a particular, it's science is deeply systematic, and then the solving of problems is also creative. So we're teaching them to be analytical, we're teaching them to be creative. All right. So on to the next slide. Okay. The pictures illustrate here certain traditional ways of teaching science. When we say traditional ways, these are the usually used. The teachers usually use this in their classrooms to give information, to give knowledge to the students. We are not saying here that traditional ways of teaching are bad. What we're saying is they have their merits, they have their demerits. So the first one would be like there's a lecture, and this is quite common, especially in the universities. And I see that in a lot of senior high schools, lectures are done many times with the assumption that the students can take in a lot of information, but that really is not the case. And then the second one under that would be a demo, so demo lessons. This is especially true when you don't have a lot of resources to go through an experiment where all students are part of it. So you do a demo to, time, resources, when you don't have lots of it. So you do that. And then the third picture would show us kids talking to each other. So this is collaborative learning. Mas maganda yung term, collaborative learning. But I think we're quite familiar with this even from a long time ago when our teachers would tell us, group yourselves into 5 and then solve this, and do that. So that's collaboration. And that collaboration is actually a 21st century skill, which as teachers we fail to instill and we fail to develop among our kids. And then the last one would be, it's a physics laboratory. I think it's a bandicraft, I'm not really sure. But the thing here is that of these 4 traditional ways of teaching science, only the collaborative learning and the laboratory activities, they're the most interactive if done properly. Kasi may iba rin collaborative learning na pumapalpak kasi hindi nga magandang pagkakadesign ng, ng lesson. And what I'm trying to come up here is this, what I'm trying to establish is this. There has to be interaction in a science class. Why is that? Because research shows that if there's active learning, if the students are interacting with resources like books, videos, lab materials, if they're interacting with other persons like their peers, their teachers, then there is learning which is even 60% more. 60% more learning happening than, say, they just read or they just passively take in the information. So this is one thing. This is one thing that is backed by research. Sitting down, like what you're doing now, sitting down and not doing anything, just listening to me is not really going to cement so many of the information which I am trying to share with you. So there are ways that even for this particular type of or strategy of teaching, there are ways to make it interactive. And so what are these ways? What exactly is interactive learning? So there you go. This according to the Australian National University. When you do interact, they also have this movement. It's called the Interactive Learning Program. And they came up, though this is not a new term, this is not a new terminology, they came up with the definition in which they say that it's a holistic methodology. It offers both online and offline components, and together it's a complete educational experience. But one of the things that I need you to also remember is that interactive learning is a hands-on approach. And this hands-on approach also is anchored on guided social interaction. So you have these tools and then you have the social interaction. When you come up with an interactive learning package, you actually have to design social interaction happening within the strategies and tools that you're using. So you ask me now, paano nga? How is this going to be done? Because, there's distance, and the distance is quite necessary at this time for safety purposes. So how are we going to do this? And the way to do this, there's no hard and fast rule. We have to think about the context of our classroom. We have to think about the context of our students and the context, even the experience that you have. Ano ba ang kaya ko? Ano bang kaya namin? Ano bang kaya ng resources? So how do we do this? Okay, it might actually be challenging to think about. It's easy to just give a module. It's easy to just give the video lesson and then not do anything about it. There's no interaction in that. But we have to think that when we come up, even in this remote learning modality, we have to think that we need to integrate interaction because first off, it promotes student engagement. And student engagement is necessary to promote active learning. Active learning is necessary to actually cement the stuff, the information that we have, the knowledge that we have in the brain for long-term memory. Kasi pag nakalimutan nila yan, wala siyang gamit eventually. Pag hindi essential yan, tatanggalin yun ng brain. Pahirap lang kasi yan sa memory load. And then with interactive learning, no lesson is the same. This prevents boredom. Though I'm not saying that all lessons should be different at all times. But, there should be variety. Kasi di ba boring naman palaging ganun lang, module, module, module. Kaya nga di ba sa Facebook ngayon, ang dami-dami nagpo-post na module, and so on and so forth. And then there is, of course, student-to-student interaction. And let me just go back to collaborative learning skills, which are necessary as 21st century skills. So there should be student-to-student interaction. And then you're also asking, paano nga, how is this going to be done? And let me just finish this slide. With interactive learning, you connect to the real world. Because when students solve real world problems, it connects them to what actually happens in the real world. So what they learn in the classroom is not totally detached from what they see in the real world. Ito kasi ang kinukulang sa atin sa science education. Science is, usually it's just for the smart ones. Or this is for science is seen as, there is an impression that science is really just a body of knowledge. But the thing is that science is what actually makes a nation progress. Science is what's going to take us out of this pandemic. Science is what's going to solve so many problems in the world, problems in pollution, problems in health, and so on and so forth. We fail to do that as educators. In the 20 years I have been teaching, it's one realization that it just bombards you every now and then, because when you go to this so many classrooms, science is just so detached from reality. And it has something to do with how two-dimensional science is being taught. All right, so that's where I'm coming from. Now, the fifth advantage of creating an interactive learning program is that there is the potential of technology to be used. I'm actually thinking that for rural schools, this is going to be difficult, though they have the television. And then for schools in the cities, there is the internet, there's the computer. But you would see, I think you've observed this, that our students, despite the fact that they are always online, walang ganon, always online or most of the time online, many of them do not have IT skills which have practical values. Take parang case in point, my son. he's always online. He's doing games. He's doing his social networking, and then he goes to Google to search for certain information. But then there are certain skills which he does not know about. Like when I asked him to type, to create a table on a Word document, he did not even know how to do that. And that's technology that is wasted because doing Word, doing Excel, doing PowerPoint, these are skills, these are knowledge which he needs as he progresses in the work. So yung mga ganon, if because there is no practicality to what we teach in science, that's why we flop most of the time. So, so far, I have been so far I have been talking about science learning in an interactive mode. I want to pause because I want you to check whether you have understood something. So I think the next four slides would contain true and false statements, and you have to answer whether it is true or false. Let's see. I think I'll just post it like this one, present it like this for a while, Oh, ayaw niya. How do I, ayan. Okay. So here's the first question, and I will be calling people, ha? Parang may recitation to, may quiz si ma, may pa-quiz ako. There you go. This is a tip. Whenever you are in a lecture, intersperse certain assessment tasks, which could be formative. Formative lang. Oh, meron nang nag-leave the meeting. Okay. Let's see. The use of technology is a traditional way of teaching science. Is Gardo around? Gardo World. Who's Gardo World? What's the answer to this? Or can we have Christine? Simon? Hello.
Yes, Ma'am Jan.
Okay, can you unmute the people and colleagues so that they can share their answers to the group?
Yeah, they can actually. I can mute them, but they cannot. I cannot unmute them. They have to unmute themselves.
Ah, okay. So right now they don't want to unmute themselves. Okay, okay. All right. So I think that the answer is even here. So the answer to this is false. So, all right, if you're too shy to make yourself heard over in this group, then just read it and then check whether the answer is correct or not. So here, the use of technology. This is not traditional. This has been there for decades, but it's not being implemented by the general population of teachers. So this is false. There's a way to. Okay. How about this? I understand there's an assessment after for the CPD unit, so please take note of these questions. So you have here phenomenon-based learning centers around the science mystery. And the answer to that is true. A science mystery, a discrepant event. So we're talking about natural events here. And then the next one is and that, of course, is true, but not complete because interactive learning also uses offline learning tools. So this is where synchronous and asynchronous learning modalities come in. So pag sinasabing asynchronous, it's not real time, but synchronous is real time like this one. I mean, like this conference, rather talk we're having. And then this one. Okay. And this one is true because what happens when we interact with the resources and with other people is that our brains come up with, the neurons come up with more connections to each other. And when there's more of these connections in the brain, then there's more learning. Learning is cemented for the long-term memory. All right. So let's go on to the next one. Let's now go to the strategies, techniques, and tools. But before, I come up with the list or I show you the list, I also need for you to reflect on the following. How can we help our students learn science better and more efficiently? This is 1997. This is from the National Academy of Science. This is a group in the US which also gives policies as to how science education is going to be directed, not only in the US but also in other countries. So how can we help them? First off, we need to teach scientific ways of thinking. So, ang makikita natin dito, the content is really just a springboard for learning. The content may be different in so many countries, but the most important things we can actually teach our kids is a scientific way of thinking. Case in point, the wearing of the mask. Many people do not believe that wearing of the mask is actually would prevent would make them safe from COVID-19. So when you tell them that no, we have to wear it, they don't think that why do we have to wear the mask. So kung wala kasing scientific way of thinking ang mga tao, they won't be able to reflect on this. Take my father, for example. My father is so hard-headed. He's a senior citizen, but he's so hard-headed. He goes out and then he goes to his friends and all that. Kasi this time around in Tacloban City, we have GCQ. So he goes out with his friends and we don't really know where they're coming from. And then what does he say when we tell him, you have to stop meeting as a group. You have to limit it. And then he says, as long as you believe in God, then you are safe from COVID. So how do you exactly tell a person who places all his faith in not having COVID to a God that he believes in? So posible talaga na hindi na develop ang scientific way of thinking ng tatay ko kasi hindi naman uso yun noon. So there you go. And then active involvement of students. Just look at the highlighted things, highlighted information. Develop a conceptual framework because many times science is really difficult to understand. So there has to be scaffolding, there has to be a frameworking, and we need to help them out, especially when they're younger students. For senior high school, we don't assume that they know these things because many times that assumption is not going to work. So many years ago, I had part-time work as an assistant professor in one of the universities here in Tacloban. I was teaching analytical chemistry. I was assuming a lot of things because they were on their second year. So it was analytical chemistry, and they didn't even know how to deal with fractions. So if they didn't know how to deal with fractions, how can they do um, dimensional analysis? How can they do the other stoichiometric computations that was expected of them in an analytical chemistry subject? So even during that time, because most of my working life, when I graduated from the university, I eventually went to or work here at Pisay. So Pisay is really I grew up here, and then I have part-time jobs in other places. But it's only when I went to a different school to do part-time work that I realized just how badly they have been educated. Basic eh. So foundations, hindi na kukuha nilang foundations. So this is what we need to do. And I see that for this group, you are young teachers. Or young lang ba yung teachers niyo? But you seem to be young teachers. And this is where the hope, this is where we hope that change is going to come in. So always think that. Don't make assumptions because your assumptions are coming from a place of expertise. So always assume that our students will have difficulty understanding certain matters. Okay, and then that's the fourth one. We always promote student interaction through group activities and discussion. And of course, there's always that varied interest in enjoyable ways. and then assess student understanding at frequent intervals. So these are not hard and fast rules, but these are things which, according to the National Academy of Science, this is how science should be taught. O, diba? Interaction. And this is how I see my son whenever I come home and then I ask him, so have you done your assignment? Have you done your online quizzes? Ganyan palagi. It's so disheartening. And just a few days ago, we've had our scholarship meeting, and this is where we discuss the situation, the conditions of each student, and we see there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of mental conditions coming out because of the detachment, because of the isolation, because of the overall depressive state that we are in. And yet we expect them, despite this, we expect also us to still go through with life, learn the way they learned before. But this is not really the case. And I firmly believe that by interjecting interaction in our science classrooms, we're going to somehow reduce the sense of detachment, the sense of isolation. Because as it is now, we just bombard them with certain materials and certain resources. We expect them to return them to us. We check them, mark them, then return it to them. Sometimes there's feedback, sometimes there's discussion, but many times, lahat lang tayo kasi, we were just groping our way through this certain pandemic darkness. And so, let me just reiterate, we need to interject interactive learning into our science class, especially now when we do not know what's happening to our kids out there in their homes. So here you go. I'm about to show you a video, but I want you to take note of the three questions, so that when you go through the video, you would be guided as to what certain things you need to learn from. All right, so let me just read through this. You can read it with me. So identify one core requirement still needed in virtual classroom. What are the 6 ways by which students are kept engaged in a virtual setting? And then I want you to reflect on this. How can we as a teacher foster belonging in a remote learning setting? Okay, there you go. So here's the video. Let me just play this for you.
It can feel like a big change, but online teaching is still teaching. Your virtual classroom will need to be managed, and you will still need to teach responsibly and differentiate your instruction. Yes, there will be some adaptations, but setting norms, cultivating belonging, and making your curriculum compelling, those are still at the core. Here are 6 tips from seasoned veterans for keeping students engaged in a virtual environment. Try making your own digital content, like videos or slide decks, but stay laser focused on keeping instruction clear and simple. The research says that being your natural, authentic self is another key here. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and let your personality shine through. Navigating virtual spaces can be confusing, and you don't want students missing critical info. Be sure to have one central hub where all the latest updates go. You can create other spaces like chat rooms or lounges for group discussions or side conversations. Virtual learning doesn't need to be chaotic. Share clear expectations for participation, respectful interactions, and dress code. Ask students to design agreements together to ensure every voice is heard. It will help them stay focused, empathetic, and kind. You may not all be in the same room, but students
Sorry.
feel a sense of community. So make time for small group work and relationship building activities. That keeps the humans behind the text or video screens connected. Giving your students some space to learn independently builds critical skills, but they'll need support too. Set online office hours so your students know when they can reach you. You should also participate in discussion threads and offer guidance and encouragement regularly. Research shows students retain more knowledge when they actively engage with tutorials. Keep learners from becoming passive observers by finding ways to build in polls, break for brainstorms, or drop guided questions into the instruction.
All right. I hope you were able to get the six tips. These are coming from veteran teachers, and these are also I've read in some research materials that these really are the best practices that's currently being used, not just currently, but for those who have already been doing online classes. These are things that they have been doing for years. Um, there's one thing, like we have sync classes, we have asynchronous classes. When you do sync classes, you might actually think that when you're doing lecture like this one, that is something that is interactive. It's actually not. Yes, your students see your face, but when their voices are not heard, or they're not made to do something else to process the information being given them, then there is no interaction there. I wanted for you to reflect back on tip number six, which is plan on interactivity. It might actually sound easy, but interactivity in any lesson, whether science or humanities or whatever, it's really not that simple. But the thing is, I would like to encourage you to do it in your future lessons, because this is again, I go back. We need to somehow reduce the sense of isolation that our students, our kids are feeling at this point when they are forced to go to school, and we are also forced to educate them. Okay, I hope you're still with me, because right now I can see your faces, just your beautiful pictures. But here it is. Best practices for teaching science remotely. This is really just how do I say that? This is really more of a summary of all the things. So they made this general. But look at the first one. Keep what is shared online simplified. I am going to tell you about, a case of a teacher, a case of a teacher. He's my son's teacher. This is a particular subject. When they first went online, there were like about 10 things that the kids in her class had to do in 1 week. Can you imagine that? Of course, this became a source of conflict at home, because for one, that particular subject is not my son's favorite, or it's not something he really understands. And then the second one is there was just too many, because you will be thinking that's just one subject in around 8 subjects. And so many of the things were not really, I think, masyado na exciting teacher, because to be fair, the materials she shared were really good. Those she designed inspired me to do even better with my presentations, because I'm galing ng teacher. But there was just too much. There was too much complication going on. So this is not just Bendici. This is the author of this research. It's not just Bendici saying keep what is shared online. I've seen a lot of videos of teachers sharing, and they know that in KISS, keep it simple. Keep it simple and short. Even videos have to be simple and short, because you don't want your students' attention getting lower and lower as things are becoming more complicated. So the key here is keep it simple. And then the second one is, this has to do, of course, with active learning, help students become the architects of their own learning. We need to give our students that, especially for senior high school, we need to give them that responsibility to learn on their own, but at the same time, we need to guide them as they go learn on their own. And you also have to give them certain leeways. For example, in my chemistry class, I ask them, how would you like this? How would you like to be assessed? Would you like, a multiple choice exam, or would you like a paper to synthesize everything that you have learned? And those, they have this choice. They have this choice because they know how better they can showcase what they have learned. So that's the second thing. And of course, the third one is this: discussion is important. It needs to be facilitated during sync classes. I'm not sure whether in your case you hold sync classes where you discuss things or you clarify things, but according to an expert from the UP Open University, and according also to certain studies that I've read, when you're doing sync class, you don't ever do lecture. I want that settling in. You don't do lecture because even in a traditional setting where you are face with your students, lectures don't usually work if you do not, especially if you don't know how to do that. In an online setting, it becomes even more difficult. So what you can do during sync classes is do flipped classroom modeling, or the flip classroom model, where you show them before, parang assignment siya. You have a video or you have a PowerPoint presentation, and then you tell your students, I expect that during our sync class, you have the following questions, you have the following things to be clarified, a list of that. I found it to really work because just last Monday, I did a flipped classroom model in my research class, and true enough, they have this so many questions that one session was not even enough. And so I had to go to the discussion board, kasi may discussion board din kami, to look at the other questions. And the questions really made me happy because they were just so insightful. And during these same classes, you facilitate. Don't be there just, asking questions or answering questions. Try to engage the other students who are not there. Kaya ako nagtatawag talaga ako, like, supposedly, for example, like, oh, ikaw, Juana, what do you think is, what can you say to say Juan's answer? So ganun lang, so that they will have a sense that there is community, that there is, there are still people outside of their own homes. So please take note, these are the best practices for teaching science remotely. And so now we go to these strategies. I understand, and I'm sure that you are not unfamiliar with all of this because you've seen this, you've read about this. Some of you might actually be using this in your own classes. So you've got the whole course strategies, and then you've got the classroom strategies. For whole course strategies, you can do problem-based learning. So even in this remote setting, even in an online setting, or even in a modular setting, your modules could be developed in such a way that the question is based on a problem, and then the students are guided on how to go about solving the problem. This can even be a group work, so they can go to, what do you call it, virtual breakout rooms. So mga breakout rooms where they work in small groups and then go back to work with a bigger group. So it's the same with project-based learning. Project-based learning could be, it could be based in their community. Kasi hindi na sila makalabas. So it could be, how can you help? An example would be, how can you help local lettuce producers who can't sell their lettuce because of the difficulty in mobility? So if this is a biology subject, it could be, what particular things do they have to know about in terms of wilting, in terms of, just how plants progress. Or if it is a chemistry class, it could be about preservatives. Or if it's a food technology class, it could be about turning the lettuce into something else. So, di ba? So, you contextualize it based on where they are at. Pag-iisipan nyo to, but this is where the fun lies. And then there's stimulation, there's role play. Hindi ko lang I can't imagine the role play, how it's gonna be done. Because you see, when we ask our students to come up with videos, this takes up a lot of their time. Ito rin yung sinasabing assumption in teachers na make a video, but then making a video, it really takes a lot of time. So, hinay tayo dyan. And the flipped classroom model, please look it up, read up on it, because it's a really good strategy, especially now that we are on remote learning. You do your your pre-recorded videos, you do your pre-recorded PowerPoint presentations, and then give it as an assignment, let it, asynchronously, let it sit through them so that they can understand it. And then the next time you go online, the next time you go on a sync class, this is one good way for you to see whether learning actually occurred. Okay, now group lab activities, it cannot be done, of course, this time around, except if there is, special arrangement like we do here, but they can still do lab activities, home-based nga lang. And I'll show you one example in which they can do at home. So that's the whole course. And then we've got classroom strategies, graphical organizers. Your generation actually know about this. I'll show you a graphical organizer later on. And then the think, pair, square, share. Brainstorming is, it's been there for so many decades, even centuries, but it's really a good classroom strategy. Even now, when they're online, you can just assign to a group a particular problem, make them brainstorm. Just, one of the ways by which you can talk. Debates, peer reviews. So, meron to, ang peer review, I use this in research, where they critique on a discussion board, they critique the, say, the topic of one group, but then we have particular expectations and rules, kasi hindi pwedeng nang-ookray and all that. So, there you go. So you see, there is a way to for interaction to happen, despite it being science and despite it being a remote learning mode. Okay, so here it is. This is Avogadro's air rockets. I'm not sure whether this is going to fit into your senior high curriculum, but uh, what I'm showing you here is, yeah, it can be done at home. And I would suggest that you just come up with a really good set of guide questions so that the students will know what exactly to get out of doing the air rocket. And then simple things like in puzzles. Even older students love puzzles. So it's something that they can do themselves. Tapos hindi siya heavy. Hindi siya heavy na nagsusolve ng problems and everything. Just to set a variation into the things that you do in your class. And here, I don't know how to go to this particular site, but this is from PEP. It's a Colorado University website where you can actually access a lot of these simulations, physics, chemistry, biology. This one I'm going to be using, Beer's Law, I'm going to be using for my advanced chemistry class, because right now we are having lessons on UV vis. So it's a UV vis analysis and then spectroscopy and all that. And there's still a lot there, and it's free, and you can use that. It doesn't ask for, it doesn't require high-tech computers, as long as you have the internet and all that it runs. Pwede rin siyang ma-download. So I have here something that's downloadable, but pwede siyang ma-download and then it works. So this is a simulation. You can do virtual labs using this. So these are examples, ano? And this is also what they do when there's a video. So I show a video, but with that video comes a lecture note. So the lecture note is really a guide, a set of guide questions, because I don't want them passively watching a video. Now, let me share with you a research of 260 German students in physics, senior high school, physics, chemistry, and biology. They were grouped into two teams. One team just watched the video and then a test was given to them after. The other team watched the video with guide questions, and then they were given the same test. And of course, what came out is this, that those with the guide questions did better on the assessment than those without the guide question. So what's the difference here? Passivity. In the group without the guided question, they were just looking, parang nanonood lang ng telenovela, ng K-drama, ganon. But in the group, which had this guide question or like this note page which I made, they had to think. While they were watching, they had to think, they had to engage themselves in the material they were looking at. So the bottom line here is that whatever resource, whatever tool, whatever strategy you use, you make sure that as the students go along, they're actually learning something. And how do you make sure they're learning something? Then there has to be a way for them to assess themselves that they're learning it. Going back to when I posted you the questions which were true or false, that's one way to check whether you're doing, where you're understanding a particular material. And then when I made but there were questions before I showed you the video. So with that, that's another form of engaging the students. So even if it's a video, even if it's a PowerPoint presentation, even if it's a comic strip or whatever, you need to be able to see that there is learning going on. Let me again go back to my son. You will see here the difference. Kasi my son has a problem in terms of executive, skills, management skills, time management, initiating a task and all that. And I only realized that during this pandemic when he is being schooled at home. And that's not good because he's in grade 9. And when he goes to senior high school, when he goes to college, he needs to actually learn how to know how to learn independently. So I'm seeing that. And so I am very particular with looking at the materials being given to him by his teachers. And I see that some teachers are really adept at making sure that learning is going on. They don't necessarily bombard the students with a lot of things. It's just a few things, but there is guidance along. Yeah, there is guidance. But the others, bongga, pabonggahan with everything, make a video, create an infomercial, etc., etc. So, I'm not blaming the teachers. Diyos ko, ang hirap-hirap ng pinagdadaanan natin ngayon. We don't know actually what we should be doing. And it's really good that you are in this talk because somehow I'm hoping that out of the many things that I've been telling you about, even just choosing one and then using it in your classroom, I'll be very, very happy to know that you're doing that. Okay, so there. When you do science, interactive learning, always think of these three things. You need to be able to present scientific phenomena, to further scientific discussion, to promote scientific inquiry. Kahit hindi mo makover, I'm not sure how this is going to play in with your performance and what 20 years of teaching experience, and then of course I say to supervisors who would tell me, did you finish the curriculum? Did you finish the syllabus? And then I say, no, it's because of this. So we teachers, I am of the firm belief that it's better to just teach the essential, make the lessons really meaningful, make the learning also meaningful, then come up, finish all of these things. I don't know how you feel about what I'm saying, but the thing is that at the very end of it, 10 years from now, what they will be remembering will only be the most essential. So, and the essential thing in science learning has to do with understanding scientific phenomena, being able to discourse about scientific knowledge, and being able to promote scientific inquiry. And so how do you do this? These are examples. So mag-demo, may demo ka. Kasi feel mo talagang magpa-video. I sometimes do that because may kids, my students request that, Mom, we want to see your face. So medyo yun. It's a bit of a pressure because when you don't know how to make sure that the lighting is good and all that. So, but do a demonstration, prepare your questions, and your kids will actually love it more than if you have this video coming from YouTube. Pero kung wala ka namang oras, wala ka namang resource, then go ahead and grab something from YouTube. Then the use of videos. I already told you how to make it interactive. Storytelling. I know that some teachers are really very good storytellers. The reason why they are loved by kids is because when the students go into their classes, it's always storytelling session time, and it's always light and all that. So if you have such talent, then show it this time around. So that's for presenting scientific phenomena, and all of these tools can actually still be used in the other aspects of science learning. Virtual breakout session. I actually don't know how to do that here in Google Meet. I haven't tried it, but I saw that earlier when we were doing a technical practice. So breakout sessions, make them discuss things. So this is where you foster community belonging, and and then this one, if you have somebody in mind, a science expert or an expert in something else, invite him or her to your online class, and then have your students be ready with questions, and then come up with this dialogue. It can be done, especially now it can be done because almost everything is virtual. And now, how do I promote scientific inquiry? How do I promote the usual things that I would use in my classrooms? One is yung mga experiments. Hindi na kasi makapag-experiment ngayon sa lab, di ba? So what I do is, there's an existing data set, and then what I just require from them is an interpretation of this data set. It's not holistic, but it's the best we can come up with, so on with it. And then there are also home-based experiments. Just make sure that the materials you require from your students can actually be found at home. And then also be mindful, because some homes don't even have cooking oil or vinegar and so on. Huwag mag-assume lahat meron yan. Huwag mag-assume na may cream of tartar and so on. Kasi kahit kami, wala kami yan. And then go on virtual field trips. I think the museum in Egypt, they've opened it. So pwede ka mag-virtual field trips sa Egypt. So there are things like NASA, they also have virtual field trip sites. Use this as springboards for your lessons. I think a lot can be done with this. And project-based tasks, I think I've already discussed this earlier. Bottom line here is that there's a science class, and then we don't necessarily focus on the content. We just make it a springboard, but we focus on the skills and the appreciation that we want developed among our kids. And then how can we use the interactive learning movement, or in this, kahit science or whatever, we have to make sure that the learning is interactive, because again, means active learning means meaningful learning. They will understand things better when they are actively engaged in what they're doing. All right. So I'm guessing it's 11:10 here, and according to Simon, we may not cover the whole 2 hours, but let's see. Simon?
Yes, Ma'am Jan.
Oh, ito na yung di ba? Uh, do we have like a question and answer portion that we can do? Because I don't think the workshop that I prepared is going to work, because they're all too shy. They're all too shy to make themselves heard. So we'll a question and answer. Sorry.
Okay, so we are now open to entertain questions. Anyone? Do you have a question regarding the discussion of Ma'am Jan? Very silent.
Oo nga.
Oo, yes.
Magtapos ka. Tapos, sige, if you have questions, I think this is the time. Or if you want to share something which you think is working in your classroom, I think this is the best time to share it with the rest of the group.
Yes, you may also do that. It could be a question or a sharing of your best experiences or practices.
Gutom na?
Okay, so hindi pa yata gutom. Para they're just shy.
Oh, you're shy. So now, do not be assuming that your students, when you call on them, that they will also be answering. Nandyan ba kayo? Bakit hindi kayo sumasagot? O yun yung mga usual na lines nga ni teacher. Magparamdam kayo. I think just to sum this up, what you need to, and again, this is coming from 20 years of experience, and I'm not just calling on 20 years of experience, but I'm calling also on 20 years of teaching, which is evidence-based. Kasi nasa research ako, so we need to have evidence-based practice. It's always, there's a cornucopia of there's a lot of these things out there for us to use. But the bottom line is this: will it work on your kids? Will it work on your students? Do you have the capacity to make it work? So yun palaging iisipin, ano bang kaya ko? Ano pa bang kaya kong ibigay? Magugustuhan ba ito ng mga bata? Will they be able to learn because of what I do? And in teaching, you make mistakes. And I think if there's one thing I have learned in the many years I've been in the profession is this: you have to be humble enough to admit when you are wrong or when a strategy is not working. You should not be proud. When your students, ito talaga, when your students are even better than you are, they know more information than you have. So it's something that we have to be quite accepting about because we're supposed to be lifelong learners. And so because we're teachers, now we're pushed to this really, really bad times. Diba? We're pushed to teach in a setting that we have not been prepared for. Diyos ko, parang gusto ko na nga mag-retire, diba? But the thing is that we adapt, and we become flexible. And I see that you're young, mga young people are nandito. So be flexible. And always think that at the end of it all, we are responsible for the learning of our students. So I guess that sums up what I have for this morning. And there are no questions. So go ahead, Simon. It's your floor.
So thank you very much, Ma'am Janeth, for this wonderful opportunity to be one of our speakers for this webinar. And then I hope our participants have learned a lot with your discussion. So for questions, since wala naman, siguro if you're shy to speak it up, you can just email us and then maybe we can connect you to Ma'am Janet if there are questions.
Yeah,
So
and if you need the slides, I think if you need the slides, I'll come up with an edited version of the slides or something, which you can read on after this one. So you can get it from me. So do I just give it to you, Simon? Yung edited
yes, Ma'am
version?
Jan.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this afternoon we will be having Dr. Rose Bernabe, but that's gonna be at around 1:30. So please be with us. I know that we are all busy, but this is just going to take around an hour and a half or two. Okay. So again, everyone, we have finished our morning session. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, Ma'am Jan.
Bye, Simon. Bye, everyone. Keep safe.
Ay, yung mga kalukuhan pa ya. Yung patok sa suba eh.